Hello and welcome to this week's Loose Links. Join us as a panel of four discuss news in and around Lincolnshire with you, all on a Tuesday night, all on this week's Loose Links. Good evening, welcome to this week's Loose Links. Joining me on the panel, Nicholas James, is Rachel Penny.
Hiya.
Jason Lambert.
Good evening.
Rosie Reese.
Yeah.
Good evening and welcome. I will tell you why I'm laughing in a minute. Good evening and welcome as we talk about this week quite a touchy subject as Will Young shares his twin brother death over alcoholism. So we discuss that sensitive subject this evening. Also, in press this week, there has been a debate and statistics on how much you should change your bed sheets. So we will be talking about how cleanly we are and how many times we clean our sheets in 1 week. And we finish on the subject of Rich Metcalf from the council has gained and recontrolled the City of Lincoln Council. But we talk about, do we really believe in MPs nowadays? Should there really be a government anymore? And do we trust anything that they say? All that on tonight's show. Good evening, panel!
Good evening.
I will share because the thing is, we did it once and I did it completely wrong. What are you doing?
I'm turning you around.
Oh, right. I did it completely wrong and we had to start all over again. And Josie was over impressed with doing it a second time, wasn't you?
I charge for this stuff, you know.
Over impressed. This week there is no polls because there was no polls put up, but we have got to do a new part in the show that we're going to be doing. What I've recently learnt over this week is that more and more businesses via Lincolnshire and around Lincolnshire are sharing their information on our page. So I'm going to do a little bit of a shout out to some of them. So one of them is one of our own, Zoe Keating, is sharing a mental health group and a peers support that she's starting up. So it is on our page. Have a look and have a nosy. Also, Let Them Eat Cake is a company that started a couple of years ago to tackle homelessness in Lincoln and how you can support it, or if you need help, go and have a look on our pages there too. Also, Retford Musical Theatre Company have shared that they are putting on a production of Kinky Boots. I'd love to see this. If I'm completely honest, I'd love to see this. But information and tickets are available on their page and they have shared with us as well. I think this week that's it. Let me just have one more look. Yeah, Retford Musical Company, Kinky Boots. Oh, there's a art and crafts Makers Market, Sunday the 22nd of May, 10 till 4 at Queen's Park Community Hub on the South Park, Lincoln. If you want some more information, it's on our page. Also, there's an open and honest discussion about living with mental health challenges, a live talk from Kate and Bill, and they have shared their link on our page. So anybody in Lincolnshire or around Lincolnshire that you are trying to get yourself known, or you've got an event coming up, please share on our page and we will share it on the show as well. Josie, welcome back.
Hey.
It's nice to see you. It's been a while since we've seen you. How you been?
Elusive. I just like to keep people waiting.
Yeah,
I'm okay.
I did send you the email with the hope that you would come back, because I didn't even message you and say, are you ready to come back yet? I just sent you the email.
Yeah, no, I'd completely forgotten about it, to be honest. I was having dinner when I got an email. I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about it.
I need to come back. Rachel Benny, it's been a very long time since we've seen you.
Yeah, no, didn't see me today either.
Did you not? Why?
Well, I knocked my router out. I didn't realise I'd knocked it out the wall, but and I've come on now, and I thought I looked all right until I looked at myself in here, and I looked like as Josie said, a TP.
Or a deck chair from Butlins, whichever you
Don't
want.
make. Hang on, wait. Don't make it out like that was completely unprompted. I'm not just a bitch.
I
That
did.
was Nick who called you a tent first.
Well, actually, I think I called myself a tent. But
I think
Nick
I took you down to a 2-man.
You did, yes, a 2-man tent, yeah, 2-man two.
said you looked
Anyway,
down.
moving on. But I did think with Josie coming on, we're going to have some intelligent conversation. But I think I seem to have been steering it in the wrong direction at the minute, aren't I? So over to you lot.
Intelligent and silly. You could be two
Well, I
things.
called you a Butlins deck chair, so I suppose it's a little bit better to be called a two-piece than a Butlins deck chair.
And I said you looked glam.
Thank you, Jason. I'm with you. Thank you.
Let's start this week's show. Unfortunately, there was no polls put up last week, so there is no poll announcement this week, but we will be back up and running after this week's show. So on Wednesday, there will be polls. Make sure you have a look at them, have your say and vote. As we keep saying every week, we are trying to read people's comments out a little bit more. So comment and you might have a readout on the show. So we start on a sensitive subject this evening, guys, really. It's quite a sensitive topic, the first one that we've got. But singer Will Young has spoken out about the pain of losing his twin brother, Rupert, to suicide in 2020. After 2 decades of his siblings' alcoholism. Speaking to BBC's One's Breakfast on Friday, he says, "I miss my brother. He was my twin and my best friend, but I don't miss the alcoholic." Rachel, let's go to you first. Does it make you think about how much we drink if we've been affected or seen alcoholism in a bad way in our lives? Are you conscious about how much you drink and how often you drink?
Personally, you don't know who's watching, do you? Really? Well, yes, I don't drink, mainly for my own health. It doesn't do me any good. I feel a hangover coming on after my second sip. And also it's a feel-good factor, alcohol is. Sometimes when you're out in a club or going out with anybody, I act the goof sometimes, and somebody says, "Oh, how much are you drinking?" "Oh, she hasn't had anything." "Oh, you look all right, pillock then, don't you? Just because you haven't had anything to make you be like that." But I've been around people who have taken the drink too far, and it does ruin a relationship. And you then think to yourself, well, if that person, say your partner, drank to excess, you don't drink, because if anything happened, well, children or yourself, or you need to go somewhere, how could you drive? How could you get and I'm too tight for a taxi. So I feel that if you're in a partnership, if one drinks, the other one tends not to, and tends to query the safety of drink a lot more. And when it goes on and on and on and on, then it can start having a detrimental effect to your relationship totally. But everybody has an addiction, some more harmful than others. And my addiction is wine gums and chocolate. Sounds trivial, I know, but we all have a sugar. I have a sugar addiction. I need sugar. I want sugar. And so it's the same with something that's harmful. You get to the point where you need it, and it can be. Alcohol is a really dangerous thing to, because you cannot just get rid of it. You cannot just stop it. You need help. But it kills relationships. It ruins relationships. And so Will Young, with his, first of all, it's his brother he's lost, which is huge. Second, it's a suicide. That's huge. And thirdly, the alcoholism. He must have lived with that. Will must have done for a long, long time before actually came to this. It's so sad, deeply. But it affects so many people, alcohol does, and it's such an easy addiction to get hold of because it's so cheap and it's so accessible. You don't say to somebody, if they were taking drugs, injecting, you think, whoa, somebody taking a glass of wine, you would think nothing of it, but it might have been their 10th. So it's a sad situation with Will. I'm deeply sorry about it.
Josie, are you the same? Do you think about and acknowledge how much you drink, or have you always been a person that just drinks when they feel like it?
No, not really. I don't have a addictive personality. I have more of like a autistic special interest, hyperfixation type thing, as opposed to actual addiction problems. I've never really come into contact with it per se. I mean, growing up, mum and dad would take in all sorts of people, all manner of people. So I was exposed to addiction at a young age there, but not much. I think it was largely hidden from me. So I don't really think about it too much. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've got to the age now where I know I know my limit, so I know the drink where I'm gonna go, oh, okay, this is the tipping point. This is like where I need to have like a Coke or just some water or some fresh air. But having said that, having anxiety really helps with not drinking because I hate seeing people, and it's usually a social thing.
Is it?
Well, yeah, for me anyway. There's very few drinks I drink for enjoyment anymore. Not since lockdown. I was at a point where I was drinking like a whiskey for. I was drinking a whiskey for breakfast in lockdown at one point, and it's not healthy. It's not good for you. And I noticed I do have self-destructive patterns, if not addictive. So I just made sure I just drink if my partner's drinking or if we're going out for drinky poos. But I drive a lot as well, and I love driving, and it's very hard to do the two.
Well, there's a new statistic that's come out as well, and it's not in the questions, but I am going to add it. So I'm going to bring in driving in a little while. But Jason, what about you? Have you ever been affected by alcohol, or somebody that you know is affected by alcohol?
No, not really. I drink rarely, probably once a week, when I'm having drinks either with my partner or if I go to my next door neighbour, we might have a bottle of wine between us. But it's only once a week, if that. And last week was the first time my husband and I had been out to a pub for probably over a year or more. And I do a lot of driving because they don't drive. So I do all the driving anyway. So I tend not to drink when I'm driving. I won't have a drink at all. And if I'm not drinking, then they tend not to drink. I mean, I did at university. I drank a lot at university, but I've never suffered a hangover. That's
Oh, you're lucky so and so.
Yeah, I've never suffered a hangover. Even when we used to have student nights on a Wednesday and a lecture at 9 o'clock Thursday morning, I would be the one who went in really bright and breezy. Even though
I did, but then I hit 30 and it all went downhill.
And I was fine all day, and people used to just say, "Will you just shut up, Jason?" We're all hungover, and I was just bright and breezy because I've never suffered a hangover in my life.
I think you've got to be. I slightly disagree with your answer there, Jason, that you know nobody that's had an alcohol problem, because as we've said many times on the show, me and Jason share an ex who that admitted to me many a times that he was an alcoholic and couldn't drink wine and couldn't do this, that, and the other. And every time we fell out, the first thing he would do would grab a bottle of wine. But also, I think alcohol has followed me all my life. And there's two people on the panel that know this lady, and I've said it many times, and she doesn't mind me sharing because it was a long time ago. But my mum, when I was very, very young, will now admit she was an alcoholic, and it's destroying. It is destroying. I will come home. She was a functioning alcoholic, so I would come home and tea was on the table and clothes were washed and all of that. We wasn't in a deprived home, but 9 times out of 10 when I saw her, she was drunk, to the point of it was really affecting me. And we'd gone to like a school fair, and I went home from school to pick her up to take her around, and she was drunk, and she went around the whole fair drunk. And I just basically said to her, I sat down with her one day and went, do you know what, I've had enough of this, and actually there's a choice now, you've got a choice. And she was like, what? And I said, well, you choose me or you choose alcoholism, because if you choose alcohol from now on, that's it, I'm walking out your life and I'm never seeing you again. I can't put up with this anymore. And I made her sign a piece of paper. How stupid this sounds, but I made her sign a piece of paper to say, I will not drink anymore. And from that day onwards, she never drank again. She never received any help. She never went to action. She had high anxiety and was put on medication. She went to the doctor because she was, but I think unless you've had that in your life, it's not there. But do you think it's really seen highly in the mental health world, Rachel?
I don't think it is. I don't think is it classed as a mental health condition? Because I wouldn't go down that line if I wanted to get some help for somebody. You were lucky that you were enough for your mum to stop. Some of us aren't. So I don't really know. I don't know. I think if you are in that situation, alcohol makes it better. If you have mental health, not a lot does make it better. The mental health that we know of, and the mental health that's in my family, and the alcohol addiction that is as well. They're two separate. They seem to be two separate things completely. The person that has the alcohol problem is functioning, and whereas the person that has got the mental health condition, the anxiety, the depression, doesn't, day to day, from when they get up in the morning to when they go to bed at night. Nothing will alleviate that pain, that anxiety, that destroys you. I don't know. I have to pass it over to somebody else actually, because I'm a bit. It's a bit draining, that question.
Yeah. Well, the driving thing that I wanted to bring up on tonight's show really is this week they were talking in news about self-driving cars. That you get into a car and you can go along the road, but you can self-drive while you email. You can press a button to the car that says that you've had too much to drink. So it's a bit more sensitive to the roads, but it only goes 37 miles an hour. It won't go any faster than that. It stops at that speed limit. But they're basically saying that you can use a phone, you can send emails while this car drives you from A to B. Josie, would you get in a self-driving car?
I'm going to say no at the moment, but I did also say that I'd never get on TikTok, and I now spend like 3 hours a day like that. So maybe it is just a case of being immersed in the culture of that being more normalized, but not right now. No, I mean, I sound so stupid. I don't even trust Google, which is stupid because Google has the entire collective knowledge of the human race. And yet I'd much rather ask like Dave next door or whatever if I've got a question, because I just like speaking to a human.
I think no, I wouldn't. Even though I don't drive and I want to drive, technology, I feel it's just gone too far and it's just taking over. To get in, I sound like a real old man, I know I do, 31 years old and talking about technology and how far it's gone. But a car, imagine the anxiety, if people have anxiety. Now, I know it's a choice, but imagine the anxiety of you not having control of this moving vehicle that you're in. And I suppose people have moaned and complained and said, well, that's just like sitting on a plane. But my answer to that is yes, you sit on a plane and you have no control, but you have two pilots that's at the front of the plane.
Who would you argue with though, Nick? If you say, oh my God, I wouldn't have taken that lane, overtake him. Who would you argue with? You take over. I wouldn't trust it at all. I don't trust
Would you
anybody
not?
arguing with me. No.
Talking about fully self-controlled cars or cars the drivers can actually take control of.
No, literally you get into this vehicle, the door closes and off it goes.
Oh,
you press a button to say go and off it goes.
Absolutely not.
If I you're going to walk off then, Jason. I thought you were going to...
I'm not, it's not happening.
I've got visions. Have you ever, you lot, no, probably Jason, you can remember. I don't know how old you are, Jason. I won't ask you, but can you remember Christine, the car that was possessed?
No.
Oh,
I know
my
Kit.
goodness. Pardon?
I know Kit, the car.
No, Kit, the car. You want to look up Christine, Google it. But Christine was a car that was possessed, and oh gosh, can you imagine getting in a car and your seatbelt won't go, let me out, and it didn't want to let you out, and then the doors went down, and oh my goodness, and then drove near a river. Oh my Lord.
Yeah, I saw the Atmos episode of Doctor Who. It's a no from me.
Definitely a no.
I have to double seatbelt when I get in the car with Rachel because she just goes wild.
You don't have to get in the car, Nick. You could walk.
You could walk. Let's move on a little bit. Josie, in response to a statement from the Department of Health and Social Care, told the BBC that improving access to mental health care is a top priority, and said that the government will be investing in an additional 2.3 billion a year into services by next year. Josie, do you think this is all too little too late? And does it take a death nowadays for anything to change?
No, death doesn't stop it. There's people dying all the time with mental health issues. No, I think I get what you're saying, but I think it's an oddly worded question. There's nothing really that's going to stop it. We forget that it's not just that we're becoming more aware of mental health issues and diagnosing more because we're more in tune with the human mind nowadays, but it's also that, you know, I'm growing up as part of a generation that are currently in the middle of our fifth once in a lifetime catastrophe. It's a lot to bear, added on to the whole, just the culture of the 20s and social media and cancel culture and the pressure to always be perfect. It's nothing is ever going to be enough. And I'll be honest, I'm sort of jaded with the government when it comes to political views. I think we've got a prime minister who doesn't even know if he was at his own party. It's like it's I don't trust anything that comes out of that house anymore. So until I actually see change, it doesn't matter.
You've jumped to the third subject before we've even got there, so hold that view.
Oh, I haven't read the agenda.
But what I'm saying about death being like death and then services start to do more about it. There was this interview this week on TV about Denise Welsh. Denise Welsh shared in an interview this week, a celebrity shared the story of her being stalked for the last years, and her house being burnt by a stalker and followed, and he got knives and this, that, and the other. And what the authorities were saying to her was basically, even though she got CCTV from her house and they knew who he was and all of that, they were basically saying to her, there's nothing to what she described, there's nothing we can do until he basically kills you. And I just think, when we look at services now, when we're looking at services, take that little boy that was horrific, his death a couple of months ago, where two parents stood outside and said he was horrendous, he had behaviour issues, he had this, that, and the other. And then we saw neglect on CCTV. And the thing that gets me all the time is I feel that people take notice and do a little bit more but it has to get that serious. It has to get to a point where somebody loses their life for them to look at the whole services all over again. Do you agree, Jason?
No, I don't. I think it's well,
go on,
no, because
Josie.
it's not. If it was that simple, it'd be nice. It'd be nice if a death actually meant change would happen, but it doesn't. There's a bit of a swell, there's a bit of a movement, and then people move on to the next thing. The news cycle changes, and you're thinking about something else. I don't see anything about Ukraine anymore. I don't see anything about the climate crisis, which has been happening for the last 60 years that we know of. I mean, we've been aware of it for the last 60 years. The news cycle's too quick, and it takes a consistent movement from dedicated people to really enact change. And life is bloody hard, and it's really difficult to commit yourself to even one cause, let alone several, because I think most of us, if we thought about it, would have several different causes that are important to us. And I think we're all in survival mode, and there's very little you can do there without actually burning out. So it is very difficult to make that change. Change needs to happen. But the problem, it's a weird attitude we have. And I guess the best analogy would be recycling and plastic use, in that there's a massive global campaign that shifts the focus onto an individual responsibility. Are you recycling? Are you separating your plastics in the kitchen? Are you turning off your lights? Are you switching the tap off when you brush your teeth? As opposed to the multi-billion, conglomerate or organizations and corporations that we are funding that are actually doing 90% of the damage. And it's the same. It's about systematic change, and you have to force that systematic change, whether that be through your money, or through your action or protests. And that's never easy nor nice. It's not nice. Protest gets dirty, has to, otherwise change doesn't happen. Women didn't get the vote until they threw themselves under carriages, and the civil rights movement has violence in it because you've got to defend yourself. It's tricky, and I don't have a real answer as to like a way out. I'm just going like, here's the problem.
It's something short bursts, so isn't it? Something happened, people jump on the bandwagon, they say it's terrible, and then people not lose interest, but they lose heart, and then things get lost, memories, and things just go along, and then people cope with their own lives, and then they get forgotten. But mental health, if you've got somebody who's in your family who's got mental health, and they go through the crisis, they start off with crisis because it's got so bad because they haven't been able to access any help. Then they go into crisis, they go into hospital, they have a few weeks in hospital, then they have a bit of CBT afterwards, and then all of a sudden you're okay and there's no help. Mental health is a long-term illness. If not, you're stuck with it forever, depending on what type of mental health you've got and what help you can get to cope with it, to manage it, given the tools to, people are just left until something else happens, and then they go through the whole process again. then they lose heart, and then the damage is done, and then the consequences can be tragic. And if you haven't got family, sometimes it still happens with family. If you haven't got any family to keep a watch over you, sometimes even that doesn't help either. If somebody's so desperate they can't get help, and they don't go down the right path, and they don't get the help they need, then the tragedy will happen anyway. But I just find that it's incredible. I have somebody in my family that has been crisis twice, and the help they got was amazing. But it got to the point, the second time it happened, they got to the point where the help was so good they didn't want it to stop because they were relying on it, but they weren't given the tools. Because they started to feel better and they were managing with the help they were getting, they thought, oh, they're getting better. You can go out into the community again. You can go out and carry on with your life, how rubbish it was before. And then if they didn't appear to an appointment because they weren't well enough, they were given a choice, they were given a chance. Oh, but nobody actually thought that this person was going back downhill again. They just knocked them off the list, knocked them off the register. And they thought, well, you're not coming to an appointment. So what do you do when somebody's old enough to make their own decisions? If it was a child of mine, if you're the parent, you can do something if they're under 16. If they're not, and they're over that age, you've got no control at all. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work, and you are right, but in defence of them a little bit, only on defence of them a little bit, is it, again, as everything, it comes down to money. So it's not just knocking somebody off the list and saying, off you go, you're fine now. It's the NHS, well, the NHS are sinking at the moment, even with COVID, and they're not over the COVID thing yet. The NHS aren't through that yet, and it comes down to money, doesn't it? And that's sad.
There's no long-term strategy. It's short bursts. At the time it happens, that's it. Hopefully it'll be okay. But it's with everything. It's with every campaign you get. If something happens, something tragic happens, you'll get onto this roller coaster of moving things to the forefront so people are aware of it, and then it just fizzles out. Nothing is long term, and it's left to people like Zoe on here, Zoe Anderson. She has done so much with this. I can empathise, the MOM, and she is taking it on board to talk to people. She gives her own time to talk to people. This is what they need. This is what people need. They need some outlet. And unfortunately, good health is expensive.
Yeah, very expensive. But let me just go back on to, hi Zoe, if you're watching. Yes, we're a massive shout out for your groups. Rachel is right. Actually, please go and have a look at I Can Empathise and MOM. They are really, really good resources that Zoe has created. So please go and have a look at that. I'll share the group link again this week so you can have a look. But let's just go on. I know it's a really difficult subject to talk about, but let's just go on the subject of suicide. And I'm going to come to you for the last question, Jason. Do you think there is enough out there for people, and I know it's down to money again, but do you think there's enough out there for people that are left behind from a suicide?
Difficult to answer because I've never been in this situation, but I don't think there is. But it is this consistent underfunding that's happened consecutively through government after government. I think we have such a difficult world that we live in now. I'm listening to Josie talking about the campaigns and the fact that you have so much to be perfect, and you've got to be this and you've got to be that. It was never quite as difficult when I was a child, because we didn't have all the internet that we do now. And I think it is difficult. I don't think there is enough for people. It's what Rachel says. It's that short burst, and then it goes. It fizzles out. And some people want just a short burst, and then they can go. Others need long term. But in this day and age, it seems really odd, in the situation we are in, that we have not looked at quite how much support people need. In the 21st century, in one of the richest countries in the world, we have not looked at more than 6-7 weeks, maybe 2 months at the most, and then it fizzles out, and people, if they've got the money, they can afford to do it. If they haven't, they're left, and there just isn't the support for anything that we've spoken about. Not long-term support. I mean, if you take the COVID at the moment, long COVID, nobody there to support people with long COVID. They're having to try and look into it. It's difficult. But yes, it comes down to money again. But I think we are more aware of it nowadays, with people needing therapy, needing help, needing support, whereas in the past we haven't been thinking about it really. And I think that's where the problem lies. We are now trying to play catch up on the situations where we should be able to provide support, because we haven't done it in the past.
And the thing is, Rachel, I wanted to come back to a statement that you said really about family and having family there, and if you don't have family there, it's more difficult. Well, I've openly admitted that my family life as a child was not the best, and actually, I have a better relationship with my mum and sister, not my blood father, but my mum and sister, than I've ever had before. But actually, I don't think it's all about family sometimes. You can be surrounded by that uplifting, sort of settled family life, but you can still suffer completely mentally. Like, I would say that I know people that have survived on chosen family than survived on blood family, because I think it's about education as well. And if you're not educated in the mental health world, or you've not suffered in any way mentally, it's really hard then to share that with your family. Do you get what I'm saying?
Instead of well, yes, of course, you've got to have the right people around you. Not every family is a supportive nature, and not half the time. Bad words. Sometimes a family can cause the problem of depression, and so not every family is always the good to have to surround you. But my father was what they called then a manic depressive, but but I was always in a fully loving family. My mum and dad loved us all, but this is what my dad had. But my mum had a real difficult life. She must have done, but she shielded us from it, because we never thought that how miserable she must have been. My dad was a plasterer, and he used to come home from work, have his tea, go to bed for a couple of hours, go down to the pub for the last pint. And it wasn't a heavy drinker. He used to come back, go to bed, go to work. And it used to be a roller coaster like that. Never went on holidays with us. He'd go to bed all weekend. And myself and my brother didn't really think it. Just my dad. That was my dad. He never gave us a difficult life, but my mum lived with that. And so that's one type of depression, but he wasn't suicidal. He was just very, very miserable. But things can happen to people. Things can happen to children in school when they start off in school. If they're bullied, this can carry on and manifest itself into later life, into a depression and anxiety, and also chemical imbalance. So tragedy through life can affect you. Situations in life can affect you. But not every family knows what to do. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do for people that I love that was in this position. I was grasping at straws. I was up all night, phoning people, and nothing you can do unless you're professional and you know what you're talking about. I have lived with depression of people around me, but I'm not a depressive. I'm one of these people who lucky enough to say I can rise above it most of the time. But when it's people you love, you can't rise above that when they're hurting. You try your best, and there's lots of people out there who've lost loved ones and they've tried their damnedest, and it's helpless. You feel so helpless because there's nothing you can do.
If you're suffering out there from the topic that we've discussed this evening about suicide or alcoholism, or you just want to reach out for some help, we will be sharing some links on our page this week. Please have a look and have a notice. Don't suffer in silence, but talk to us about, do you think the mental health world has finally got to a place where it should be in 2022? Do you think alcoholism should be looked at a little bit more? And do you think there should be more support for people out there that have lost somebody from suicide? Do you think there should be more out there than we've already got? Have your say. Make sure you have your say as much as we have our say. Remember, it's your show as well as ours. But moving on slightly to a quite lighter topic, I'm going to talk about In Between the Sheets, believe it or not. So I'm going to discuss In Between the Sheets, as some may think of it as a topic as not to be discussed publicly, but it's one that affects each and every one of us. How often should you be changing and washing your bed sheets? Almost half of single men said that they don't wash their bed sheets for up to 4 months at a time, with 12% admitting that they wash them when they remember, which could be even longer. Single women changed more often, 62% cleaning their bedding every 2 weeks, and a couple claiming to do theirs every 3 weeks, according from the data from the bedding company. Jason, how often do you change your sheets?
Every 2 weeks.
Oh, really? Every 2 weeks?
Yeah.
I had a friend that I'd like, because I'm an every week person. I'm a every Friday, all bedding in the wash, back on again. But my friend Lorna, if she's out there watching, my friend Lorna, who's a single lady, would say to me, oh, every 2 weeks. And I would go, why every 2 weeks? You swear everything comes out of you. There's more than happens than just sleeping in a bed. She said she would lay one side 1 week and then the opposite side the other week. So she didn't change her bed till every 2 weeks. What about you, Rachel? How often do you change your sheets?
Every week.
Every week.
I love a nice fresh bed, but my dog jumps on my bed, and so I do put a little blanket down on the top. But sometimes I wake up in the morning and his posterior is usually in my face, or he jumps on my pillow. So I know it's not pleasant, is it? You shouldn't sleep.
Is this still the dog?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Well, yes. But you know, every week, it's an every week job. It really is. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. Thing is, you put stuff. You put moisturizer on your body. You put your you know, my brother does. He does the same. And you can see sometimes his silhouette on his sheet where he's been. He just lays like in one position. No, a week to 2 weeks, depending on how often you're in your own bed.
Oh, really, Rach? What about you, Josie? How often do you clean your sheets?
Well, I have a pretty active partner, so every few days, I guess. I mean,
Wow.
when I was
Lovely.
when I was single, maybe like every 1 or 2 weeks, unless I was in a depressive episode, in which case I could go like 2 or 3 months. But yeah, quite. My water bill's gone up.
The thing is, I used to live in a house share where he didn't believe in changing his sheets, and he would have people back and all of that jazz. And I just used to think you could smell his bed when you walked out your own bedroom in the morning, and I just think to myself, if I can smell that from walking out of my bedroom, how are people going back and going, oh yeah, I'll sleep here all night? It's just a bit like to the point that a support worker would have to come in and go, like after 5-6 months, and almost drag the sheet off the bloody bed. And I just think, ooh.
It you go to bed in the buff, isn't it? You know, you have to get up in the night, and there's next morning there's a not nice like go faster stripe launch mark off the bed. You know, you have to put your gym jams on, don't you?
Well,
You
I
men.
just wipe when I go to the toilet. I don't know what you're doing.
That's before you've gone. The thing is, no, I'm not saying that I do this by experience. I'm just thinking,
Sure.
I don't. I've always got my gym jams nice and tightly body.
I mean, a little bit of stank is okay. I mean, I know it sounds gross, but if you're actually honest about it, like
I am.
yeah, well, I mean, my partner was over for a few days the weekend, and I've only just washed my sheet now. I didn't wash them last night, and I woke up and I don't know, yeah, I smelled the night before and a little bit of coffee.
Oh, really?
She's clumsy, and I was like, yeah, that's a good way to start the
Sometimes
day.
it's nice though, because if your partner's over just for a weekend, just keep them on one extra night because you wake up and smell them.
Which sounds creepy when you say it out loud, but yes, I know what you mean. Yes.
But it is nice, but then you can wash it straight after that. But if you can actually just smell their scent or whatever they've been wearing, or they're it's just nice if they're not going to be there for say a week, or you're not going to see them for 2 weeks. Just that one night, just to be able to smell them.
Not the nice
Crispy. You're not plastering the walls. What are you doing, Nick? You just. How many people you got in your bed? God.
Unless you have your dinner in there.
You don't have to snap them off in the morning. You just throw them in the wash. You're all good.
Let's move on from sheets a little bit.
Yes, the subject that you brought up. Let's quickly.
Yeah, I did. Josie, are you a house proud person? Are you, or do you just not have the time? So if living at home, are you if somebody's coming around, are you quick out with the Hoover and the duster before someone comes in, or are you just not bothered?
You're sort of in my crap room at the moment. I've got a slightly nicer corner there, but no, actually, it's just a freezer and a guitar. What I'm in about. The rest of the house is really nice. I'm kind of house proud, I guess. But I'm also really lazy. I don't know.
Are you bothered about people seeing a mess?
Yeah, you know what? No, I am. I've just thought about it because anytime I have someone over, I'm vacuuming. For some reason, I'm weirdly bad about dusting, but I do vacuum still. It's. But I'll even go across all the carpets with like one of those sprays, like odor sprays, and going everywhere. So I guess I am house proud.
Are you a dirty person, Rachel, or are you a
and what about your house?
And clean? Yeah, what about your house?
What do you think, Nick?
Well, I think you're very crisp and clean. I'll tell you something. You go around to Rachel's.
Don't use that word crisp again, please.
Yeah, not after the bed sheets.
You go round to Rachel's house for a weekend, and she says to you, "I'll come for the weekend and have a relaxing weekend with me. We'll sit and eat dinner and all of that. But you've got to sweep a garden. You've got to tidy up. You've got to get the Hoover out."
No, don't. But you don't come and to somebody's house and just expect to be waited on, do you?
Not if you're actually a friend, no.
No, you don't. You join in, and
Yeah.
then you give them COVID, and then you take all their food and shopping home, and there you go. We won't keep going on about that though. Will we?
Is there
Oh,
a little bit of a
Rachel,
grudge here?
Say again.
Is there a little bit of a grudge I'm sensing?
I think the word "little bit" is not quite the right term.
Rachel's just more mucked off that the night before I was diagnosed with COVID that I ate one of the jellies and she had to give all the jellies to me.
He had his fist in my jellies, and I had to give this great big bag of £7 worth of beautiful jellies. And then when he got better, he messaged me on here and video called me, and he said, "Oh, I've got his putting as many into his mouth as he possibly could." But anyway, we're not going on about that. That was my addiction. You see, I could have been on a slippery slope after that.
Jason, are you a house proud person? Are you somebody that's out with the duster and the feather boa?
Feather boa, not when I'm cleaning. If my mum and dad are coming up, yes, then it's full on dust and tidy. Full on dust, clean, tidy. In fact, I've actually brought cleaners in to clean my house the weekend, the day or two before my parents come. Otherwise, I will do it myself. But yes, I do tend to tidy up. My house, if you saw my house, you would not think so, because it's an organized chaos. And my problem is that once I tidy, I then can't find anything. Because while I know where it is, and while it's in a bit of organized chaos, I can lay my hand straight on something I need. As soon as I tidy it up, I can't. So I live in an organized chaos, but I know where everything is. If my parents say they're coming, it's all on everything into cupboards and doors and just shove it where they can't see it.
I
can't
think
do
no,
the
with
organised chaos. I feel like my makeup table is like my tiny bit of chaos. Everything else, I have to put everything right where it's supposed to be.
Oh no.
Well, when I first, me and Rachel have met via Loose Links. This is how we know each other. When I first got to know her, I thought, oh my goodness, she's putting me to shame. Like I would sit down and she's always doing something. She's washing up, or she's mopping the floor, or she's out in the garden doing something. But literally, I learned that if she sat down, it was that after 1 minute. She would sleep on the sofa.
I have a problem. It's not narcolepsy, but it's yeah. When you're around Nick, it can be boredom sometimes.
So rude. Tell us how often you clean your sheets. Do you leave it once a month, or are you every week? Are you a house proud person? Do you like the proudness of your house? And the last question I want to ask the panel before we move on is: are you terrified? Well, not terrified.
Yes.
That's the wrong word to use. Are you nervous if you hear that unexpected doorbell? So if somebody suddenly knocks on the door and you're not prepared for it, does it make you nervous to answer the door? Are you the first to run to the door, or are you hiding behind the curtain? So let's go to you first, Josie, because I can see your face and your brain ticking at the same point. So let's go to you first.
Depends who it is.
Does
Yes.
it?
Well, it does really, because if it was somebody who I thought I need to tidy, I would just say, if you could just give me a moment while I put the dog outside, and then I'd have a quick run round and tidy what I could do. And then, yeah, I mean, I have a friend who comes over on a Wednesday night after choir. She stays because she works close by and lives in Galston, which is another half an hour from me. So she stays over Wednesdays to travel from here rather than travel all the way home. Now, on every Wednesday, I have to go into the spare room and tidy the spare room because that's where all my rubbish and clothes and everything gets put to be put away. But they never seem to get from there to the cupboard. So
I'm in my spare room right now. This is the spare bedroom, and I will not show you the bed. It does look a lot better than it did. But yeah, I agree. Everything gets dumped in the spare room. What about you, Josie? If that doorbell goes, are you hiding behind the door, or are you welcoming with open arms?
It depends what I'm doing, I guess. If I'm in the middle of filming something, I'm just turning all the lights off and pretending like I just died.
Or if your partner's there.
Say again?
Or if your partner's there.
Well, if I'm filming, my partner is generally there. Yeah. No, usually like daytime, it means I've forgotten I've ordered something, or my partner has ordered something for me. So yeah, I hate people, and it means I have to interact with a person, but it's only for like a second, and then you get something. And that's what interactions are for, right? You don't actually talk to people unless you want something from them. And it might be I've got so much coming this week. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm like waiting for the doorbell. I've got like a new skirt coming. I've got the top coming. I've got I think my partner sent me some, like a jumpsuit or something. I've got all sorts on the way.
Oh,
It's
I need
great.
a partner like you, Josie. Someone that drops stuff at the door. I'll be right happy. What about you, Rachel? Are you quite happy to open your door nice and wide if your doorbell is rang?
So weirdly phrased.
Yes. As I say, I've got quite a big frontage.
Also
Not
weirdly phrased.
Well, yes, at the house, so I can usually see anything coming past or anything stuck. And if somebody comes down the drive, I can see before they can see me. But there was one occasion about, I don't know when it was not too long ago actually. But there was somebody at my door and I couldn't recognise them because the front door has got glass panels down there, half glass and then PVC at the bottom. And you can see a silhouette inside. I was halfway up the stairs and I was like a jumping squirrel through the air. I was halfway up the stairs and I just did a star shape on the stairs like that and I didn't move. And they must have gone for ages. They must have gone ages ago, but I didn't dare move because I thought they'd see me. They'd see me shuffle about. I just laid there for ages, and I thought I'm getting cramp.
They definitely saw you.
No, I was halfway up, and I don't. Unless they went like that right to the glass, they wouldn't have seen.
At the very least, they've got to have heard the sudden like.
Well, we've got a big porch as well, so they probably didn't.
Josie, that we're in a private conversation between Nick and Rachel.
Sometimes.
No, it wasn't Nick. I'd known he was coming.
I'd never go for their frontage.
You can tell when Nick's arriving because the Jaws theme plays in the background.
No, Nick would go to the back door, wouldn't you, Nick?
Oh, the tradesman's entrance.
Precisely.
Right, slowly moving on. Are you quite scared when the doorbell rings? Are you quite averse? Are you quite a person that changes your sheets once or twice a week? Or are you also house proud? Are you quite proud to let somebody in your big frontage? Let us know what you think. Remember, it's your show as well as ours. But let's move on to the last topic before we all fall apart. Labour leader Rick Metcalfe has said that the politician life has been devalued in his eyes as the election, as his party retained control of the City of Lincoln Council on Thursday night. Josie, do you really believe in voting, and do you really think it makes a difference?
Yes and no. Yeah, I believe in voting. No, I don't believe it makes a massive difference right now. But that's because the way I vote.
Right. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, I'm liberal-minded, and I've been living in Tory Britain for the last 10, 12 years. I've slowly watched mental health programs, the NHS, social programs all slowly get cut and underfunded, schools going private to actually no aid of the education kids are getting. Even basic stuff like roads falling apart because Carl McCartney would rather you know, pay his family than fix the roads. So we're in such a Lincoln is such a weird place because it's so blue, but it's so working class, and that I do not understand the working class Tory voter myself. I'm open to debate and discussion. I just don't understand the thought process behind.
Does
that
anybody agree, disagree?
I vote, and I always say to people, if they don't vote, but then they moan, I go, well, you can't. You haven't got the right to vote. You haven't got the
100%.
right to moan about it if you haven't voted in the first place. I mean, I am very lucky in the fact that my council in Norwich is Labour through and through, and now has a majority of 11 seats, the city council in Norwich. And that's quite odd, because Norwich is what Lincoln should really be, because Norwich is a much more retired, well-off people. There's a lot of well-off people in this county or in Norwich, and the city council is more Green and Labour than it is Norwich. So it's very strange. But last Thursday I went and voted, and then did 2 hours of telling at the polling station, of counting people who was coming in and out. And I give my time to do that, and I also deliver leaflets for a opposition party to the government in this area, in my area, in Norwich. I deliver leaflets. So I do believe in voting. Does it make a difference? I would like to think it does make a difference. And I'd like to think that if everybody actually voted, it would make some kind of difference. Then you say, do we look at a different way of doing things? Do we look at a representation poll kind of thing, as opposed to the counting of the traditional way? Do we look at proportionate? I don't know. It's very difficult, but yeah, I mean, I've lived now with 12 years of Tory control, and really dislike it. And I have to think very carefully at church when I pray, and we pray for the government. I have to say the government and loyal opposition, so as not to offend anybody within church. It's very difficult, but I think people should vote. I mean, the ladies went through massive suffragette movement to get the rights to vote, and I think they should be allowed to use it the same way as everybody else should have. Do we look at 16, 17-year-olds voting like they have in Wales? I don't know. There's a lot of questions in there. But in answer to your question, yes, you should vote, and I hope it would make a difference.
Rachel, do you still believe in an MP?
I don't think with politics, unless the policies that they put in their manifesto and what have you, unless it actually applies to you, I don't think you've got the drive to what am I trying to say? I don't sound very eloquent on this subject at all, but if something matters to you enough, you'll vote for it. If your MP is pushing for that, and when they used to come round, but they don't anymore, and you ask them what their policies are and what they're going to put forward and why should you vote for them, but they don't anymore. And so unless you actually go and find out, and we don't even get many leaflets now being put through the door of what they're proposing to do. So you know, these elections, they kind of creep up and all of a sudden they're here, and I don't think they do enough canvassing and campaigning to bring it to the people, so they are more aware of what's going on and what's happening and what they should be voting for. But you see, we're coming to an age now, the last 10, 15, 20 years probably, where it's not in people's, the younger generation now, it's not in their mindset to vote. And so the statistics and the turnout are falling dramatically. I always go and vote every time, but I vote for some part of me, unless I actually look to what I'm voting for. I vote because of what I've always voted for. And who I've
And
always voted.
Josie, do you believe in the House of Commons that Boris Johnson's sorry was
No.
enough?
I don't even think he is sorry.
No, I don't.
No, I know. I don't like talking about Boris Johnson because I like to keep things civil and respectful and try and understand other people's point of view. But I just can't with him. So instead, I will say that I actually did write to my MP for the first time in my life last week. I've never felt strongly enough about anything to bother because you never get a response. But with the whole issue with conversion therapy and more MPs coming out in favour of discounting non-binary people and trans people from conversion therapy, my MP and my Prime Minister are clipped in essentially saying, I need to be electrocuted and tortured until I'm cured of being trans. And I think that's insanity. And so there are things that will motivate you. And I've done what I can to whip around as many people as possible to write as well. And thankfully, people have paid attention. I'm in a very queer-friendly, cultured work environment, so that's been great. But I've full-blown wrote to him and called him a murderer. I said people are killing themselves because of this stuff like this. And if you're not going to come out and stand for it, we're going to tear you down because we're not having it anymore. It's our brothers and sisters are dying. That's brave
of you to do, though. That's really brave.
Well, is it though? Because I've not even had a response from his admin team, let alone him. So I mean, what is it going to? Nothing's going to come from it. I have to do it because I have to have done something. But you know what else? I'm very disheartened with it all, if I'm honest.
Yeah. We're still not in a society that it's just hard, isn't it? It's a difficult one, the LGBT world, completely, because some people will say that actually stop screaming and shouting from the hilltops now because actually you've got acceptance, you've got this, that, and the other.
No,
we clearly haven't. We're clearly not at a stage yet where we need to stop shouting, and that's the sad thing about it. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for watching this evening. It's been incredible. Can you thank my panel for this evening? The person that loves the doorbell, that's Josie Reese.
Okay.
The person that's house proud and will whip round with a Hoover, that's Jason Lambert. And the person that loves the star jump and has a massive frontage, that's Rachel Penny. The person that always enjoys the back door, that's me, Nicholas James. Thank you for watching this week. Join us next week for a brand new panel with brand new discussion. Good night, God bless, and we'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.